Mr. Dellarina,
Here.
Mr. Duncan,
Here.
Mr. Gaffney,
Here.
Mrs. Crock, Mr. Ray, Mr. Rossi, Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Tappan,
Here.
Mr. Taylor, Councilman Schindler,
Here.
Mayor Francis,
Here.
Mr. Gilbert.
Here. Minutes. A motion is in order to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 5th, 2022. These meeting minutes were electronically distributed. Are there any additions or corrections first? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
I second it.
Okay,
Mr. Bongiovanni,
Yes.
Mr. Dellarina,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffney,
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert, I think it's probably a good time to say that Judy has joined the party.
good.
Okay. Councilman Schindler.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Mayor Francis,
Yeah.
Mr. Gilbert.
Yes. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move one item of new business up to right now. We're going to ask that someone on the council or on the board make a motion to approve a meeting for June 7th, 2022. We only have one meeting scheduled in June. And if we stay with only one meeting, we don't have much leeway in in adding anything. So our meetings are pre-booked. So does somebody want to make a motion to add a meeting on June? Before we do that, why, Nicole, did we not have a meeting June 7th?
It was never on the original reorganization meeting. I believe it's because when the meetings were in person, the courthouse was used for voting. So if we go back to in person, that date would be a problem.
Thank you. Okay, so somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to add the meeting on June 7th.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Bongiovanni,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffney,
Yes.
Mrs. Crock,
Yes.
Mr. Tappan,
Yes.
Councilman Schindler,
Yes.
Mayor Francis,
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert.
Yes. Okay, then we have added a meeting for June 7th to our agenda. So we'll have two meetings each month, including June.
We get more pay.
Pardon?
More pay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Same pay as usual.
We
No
need,
continued
we should be getting
applications.
hazardous pay.
We'll go right to the new applications. Brian Wisdom, block 30501, lot 4, 307 Lakeside Boulevard. The applicant is seeking short-term rental certification of pre-existing non-conforming use. Failing certification, variance for two-family use. Variance is being requested, et cetera, et cetera. So let's start with the pre-existing. I think Cliff London is going to be representing you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Gilbert, Cliff London here.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there's a threshold issue here, and I had been in touch with Mr. London about this today. There's a lot of proof that's been offered with the application in terms of pre-existing non-conforming, the most I've ever seen, I think. But
Right.
another aspect is he is asking for a short-term rental use of the property. And the question came in, well, there's two residential structures on that property. was that the intent, or is that the language in the short-term rental ordinance that would permit that? And the particular language under owner occupied, there's a definitions section, and it states it shall mean the owner of the property resides in the short-term rental property or in the principal residential unit with which the short-term rental property is associated on the same lot, and identifies same as his principal residence. So the question is, well, what if there's two residences on the lot? I can see this, I can argue this out either way, frankly. You could say, well, he resides in the principal residential unit because it's a duplex. But then there's a different section that talks about duplex or more than one unit in a home. So Mr. London's position is a separate residential structure on the lot could be used for short-term rental purposes. And I think the board has to make a ruling on that issue initially, because if the board feels that that's not the case, then only the class 4 members should participate, because I believe it becomes a use variance at that point.
What does that ordinance say about that, Bill? We have a short-term rental ordinance. What direction does that give in that case?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know that it anticipated it, frankly.
Well, it does say, if I recall, that the resident has to be there, doesn't it?
Well, the question is, what's there?
Where does the resident
If
reside?
I may, Mr. Mayor, the definition of owner occupied clearly has a provision in it when it talks about or lives in another residence on that same property. And that's our case here. We have the principal main house where the applicant will be living, and then the boathouse would be where the short-term rental would occur. That is the second structure on the property, but the definition of owner occupied clearly anticipated that when the council adopted that ordinance.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure it's that clear, but I think certainly it's subject to that interpretation. Because again, what it says is the owner of the property resides in the short-term rental property or in the principal residential unit with which the short-term rental property is associated on the same lot. That could mean a separate structure. It could mean the same structure with more than one apartment, you know? So I don't think the language is overly clear on that, frankly.
Right, and I'm sharing my screen and I'm showing a copy of our
Your ordinance,
the ordinance.
right, definition.
Well, I read it to say as long as the owner occupier lives there, it can be available for short-term rental. That's for our ordinance.
Well, when you say live there, would it be live in the same building or live in the property?
It says lives in a short-term property or in the principal residential unit.
Yeah,
Short-term rental is associated on the same line, identifies his or her principal resident as that. We'll go down the page, Alan.
yeah.
Yeah, we have other properties that as long as the owner had a residence on the property and was responsible for that area, that met the definition of the ordinance. We have this in a lot of different places.
Well,
If that's
In other
the
words,
case, then
we could rent out our little guest house. But if we
But
were
it-
not living there, we could not rent
It
out
has
the
to-
whole thing.
I think we have to get the people sworn in first, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the board members can make a ruling on that if you've got enough information to make a ruling on it. If you determine that in fact that is permitted, then this does not become a use variance. It is not that. It's just a review of the pre-existing non-conforming.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think the ordinance is pretty clear. They just have to go through the permit inspection process, as I see it.
Right.
How many
Is
rental
that-
properties are actually on the property? I mean, you got a duplex in the main house and you're renting the boathouse.
No, there's not a duplex in the main house.
No,
The main
the-
house is,
The main house is the primary structure,
Right.
and the boathouse has an apartment upstairs.
And is that the consensus of the board then, that we would have, this would be a permitted use?
Does anybody from the board object to that?
No, I don't.
No.
All
What's
right,
the-
seeing no
what's our-
objection, we'll continue with this.
Okay, then we can swear in the witness.
Okay, Mr. London, who is going to be providing testimony?
The only witness I have to present is Brian Wisdom, the applicant himself. Essentially, everything else can be done on the papers. I believe we've submitted a completely comprehensive package of information as to the pre-existing non-conforming use to you.
Okay,
And,
then.
you know, it would be my intention
Let's
to
get Mr.
work
Wisdom
through.
sworn in. Bill Haggerty,
Mr. Wisdom, are you there? Mr. Wisdom?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
And you're the property owner?
yes.
Okay. Mr. London did provide a very comprehensive packet of information as to the historical use of the property, including the Sanborn maps, which always seem to provide very helpful data, and tax records, bills, and I don't know that we've ever had one that has been so comprehensive in the past, but we should have a record in terms of the number of bedrooms in the main house and in the boathouse.
Right. So, Mr. Wisdom, how many bedrooms are in the main house at this point?
There's three. There's 4 bedrooms. There's 3 small rooms in the master bedroom.
And when you purchased the house, when did you purchase the property?
In November.
And at the time, was there construction before you purchased, was there construction underway?
Yeah, we bought the house. It didn't have the C of O, so we had to wait for the previous owner to finish whatever had to be done. And once it got the C of O, we went into closing.
So the renovations to the principal structure were in fact done in accordance with a variance that I believe was obtained in 2008 by the prior owner. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the borough, in fact, inspected all the repairs in the main house and in fact approved it?
Yes.
You have a continuing certificate of occupancy or a certificate of approval for that construction?
Yeah.
Can we then move on to what's in the boathouse? Can you describe to us what's in the boathouse now?
Currently, it's a 1-bedroom boathouse. There's the boat below on the lower level, and then upstairs is where the apartment is.
And what besides 1 bedroom, is there a kitchen facility?
Yeah, kitchen, living room, and deck area.
And is there a bathroom facility?
Yes.
And in fact, do you have separate sewer bills for both structures?
Yes. Two grinders.
What other information would the board like to hear about? And what do you propose to do in the boathouse?
Use it as a guest house, short-term rental, and we're not planning on changing anything on it, renovating it, expanding it. We're just going to leave it the way it is and use it the way it was used historically.
When you entered the contract of sale to purchase the property, was there a tenant in the boathouse?
There was a tenant up until September, and he had moved out. So when we did, it was delivered vacant, but there was a tenant in the boathouse prior to us purchasing it.
And the Sanborn maps that we've included in our application package, where did you obtain them?
From the Morristown Historical Library.
So they provided them directly to you?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, how do you want us to proceed? You want us to work through the package or?
No, I think we can accept the package on its merit. I have a question, however, and I think you discussed this with Mr. Haggerty earlier. If Mr. Wisdom wants to rent this short-term, then they can't have a long-term rental as well. So I just want to make sure that Mr. Wisdom is understanding that if we approve this, it's for the short-term rental only.
You understand, because you register that unit, you have 120 days of use of the unit as a short-term rental, but you can't have it both ways. If you have a short-term rental, it cannot also be a use beyond that short-term period.
Are you saying simultaneously, or are you saying permanently?
I'm saying for the whole year.
Per year?
That's what a short-term rental is. You've declared that unit to be a short-term rental.
Right. Yeah, my concern would be, Mr. Hagerty, that if the short term didn't work out and they wanted to go back to a 3-month rental or a 1 or 2
Well,
month
then
rental.
it just takes it off the registration.
Right,
No
okay.
longer, then they
Not
can-
that we're abandoning
3-month rental is
potential for that
considered a
use.
short-term rental.
Yeah, you just can't have both. If you're
Right.
registered as a short-term rental, you're a short-term rental.
So if a
Mr.
tenant,
Wizard, you
if a
understand
tenant wanted to expand his stay for more than 28 days or whatever it is, I would have to tell him that he has to move out and then come back in or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the terms of the short-term rental. You have to follow the short-term rental. If it's
Sure.
going to be a registered short-term rental, you
Yeah.
have to abide by the ordinance.
Yep, no problem.
If in any
Okay.
1 year it wasn't working out, they could withdraw the registration and go back to a 1 or 2 month rental.
Or whatever you want to do, yeah.
Right, understood.
Okay, understood.
All right. And are you in receipt of the Mont McDonald letter of, let's see, what was the date on that one? I think it was February 22nd or 23rd. Here it is.
I believe we included it in our package, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Technical review just had 2 items. The applicant is seeking certification pre-existing non-conforming for 2 primary structures, and should the board review this favorably, condition of approval should be based upon submission of a short-term rental permit from the borough's municipal housing liaison. And that would have to be provided before advertising for rent. You understand that?
Understood.
Okay. First of all, does anybody from the board object to simply accepting the voluminous work of Mr. London as proving that the pre-existing use does exist? Anybody object to that?
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. London, the tax records indicate a 4-bedroom use of the main house.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so,
Those tax records were provided to us by Mr. Donegan, actually.
okay. Mhm.
All right, let me open it to the public. Would anybody from the public like to question or make any comments about this application? Anybody at all from the public?
If you're interested, please go to your
Yeah, go to reactions,
raise your
bottom of the screen and raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board? Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, the motion would be to accept the application to declare this to be a pre-existing non-conforming use consisting of 4 bedrooms in the main house and 1 bedroom in the boathouse, and also that the separate boathouse apartment would qualify for short-term rental.
And cannot be even advertised until the, as John's as John's letter said.
Right, it has to comply with the ordinance.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Nicole?
Who made the motion?
I did, Anthony.
Okay. Mr. Bongiovanni?
Yes.
Mr. Dellarina?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffney?
Yes.
Mrs. Krauk?
Yes.
Mr. Tappan,
Yes.
Councilman Schindler,
Yes.
Mayor Francis,
Yeah.
Mr. Gilbert.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wisdom. You have your permission to, you have your certification of pre-existing conditions, and you can go ahead and rent that. Make sure you get the,
No. He's got to go through the permit process.
well, that's
Yeah.
what I was about to say, Mayor.
Yeah.
Make sure you go
Understood.
through the permit process first and present the permit to Ms. Fazio. And then you can go ahead and rent and advertise for rent.
Great, thank you.
Thank you,
are
thank you,
very
Mr.
welcome.
Chairman and members of the board. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. Okay, next we have Marcelo and Charlotte Ciorino, block 30408, lot 8, 255 Lakeside Boulevard. Applicant would like to expand second floor and of main house and guest house and expand the deck. And there are variances being requested. Now we have a problem here, and that is we don't know whether this is going to be a use variance or not.
Well, yeah, it would be because we've got two residential structures on the lot with
They want to expand 1, 2,
an
3.
expansion.
Well, but if as the last application, they have testimony to provide to us to show that it is a pre-existing non-conforming use, then it's not a use variance.
Well, yeah, that aspect is not, but if they go beyond that and they say we want to expand, in this case, both of the houses, then it becomes
Oh,
a use.
that's right.
That's the
That's
difference.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll recuse on this one, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Schindler?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I will recuse myself also.
Okay, then we will bring two alternates on to replace them. Are Mr. and Mrs. Fiorina here tonight? Yes, and are you going to be providing testimony? You're muted.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
We have both our architect, Steve Bias, the engineer, Tom, and our contractor, Jimmy, on the call as well. We'll obviously answer any questions you guys have for us. We're buying this house. We bought this house for a summer home for us and our family.
Okay, then, Bill, you want to swear them all in, please?
Please raise, okay, Mr. Bias, are you here too?
Yes, sir.
And your contractor here too?
Yes.
Okay, and
Contract.
who else do we have?
Graham's the engineer.
Okay, everyone raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do,
Yes.
yes.
And Mr. and Mrs. Sereno, you are the property owners, so we have that. Mr. Bias, you are the architect, and you've testified before this board in the past, I know. Mr. Graham, you are the applicant's engineer, and you've testified before this board in the past as well. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Bias and Mr. Graham, you're both currently licensed.
Yes. That's correct.
Now we're left with, and is it Jimmy, Jimygofan?
Yeah, correct.
And you're the contractor. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, now, Mr. and Mrs. Fiorino, first question is, are you asking us to give permission to have two residences on a single lot? Or are you going to provide testimony to show that this is a pre-existing non-conforming use?
It is we bought it as a pre-existing
Well, but
non-conforming.
it hasn't been certified by this board. You can't just say that it's pre-existing. You have to prove it somehow. You have to prove it with testimony and or documentation, just as Mr. Wisdom did.
And I would defer to Steve, the architect, and Tom. I mean, when we bought it, there were two structures there, and they were both, as to our understanding, they've been there for a long time. So
You understand, you were present for the prior application. The Hopatcong zoning ordinance was enacted in the 50s, and if the use precedes that, then it's pre-existing non-conforming. The way the prior applicant provided proofs was there's what's called Sanborn maps that are insurance maps from considerably before that sometimes will show the improvements on a property, and in this case showed two houses. In their case, showed two houses on the lot. They also had a copy of a prior resolution that dealt with the property that referred to a couple of houses on the lot and extensive tax records in that regard. But we just can't start from the premise that, well, it's a pre-existing non-conforming because that's the way you bought it. But we do have to have some evidence. A second question really is, your application does request expansion of both of those buildings. And in order to provide a credible case in that regard, you have to show some justification for that relief, that this is necessary. This is a use variance, so this threshold is very high, that somehow there's exceptional circumstances that dictate that you have that expansion of those structures. Now, historically, you said they've existed and apparently have existed on the property for a long time, and you have to present some evidence to the board of a change in circumstance or some reason why the board should favorably rule on this. Typically, you would bring a planner in to provide some testimony or some evidence in that regard.
But the first thing is you have to either prove the pre-existing non-conforming use or request a variance to allow for two structures on a single lot. And you haven't asked for such a variance.
Yeah, we didn't know that this was an issue. We were going for an expansion. We didn't know that there was a problem that we needed probably a Sanborn map for.
So I believe I brought this up with Mr. Donegan before we even made application. And he helped me. He was kind enough to walk me over to the different tax offices to look up some of the information. But I believe we submitted one of the original surveys. I believe it was from 1927 that had both structures depicted on that piece of property.
Okay.
Along with some deed information that went way back to quite a ways back. It had some very interesting language in it as well.
Yeah, I don't know that that was presented with the application that's been distributed.
No, I don't think so. I'm looking at the information we have. It's not on there.
If you have that information, could you present it on the screen
You're not on mute.
for Tom?
No, you didn't.
No, I don't see it.
I don't know why.
I don't know how to shrink my screen here.
Bill, do you remember this? Bill Donegan.
Truthfully, the review on this was back in December, and although I typically will suggest to applicants that they when we do a situation like this, it's beneficial to them to go for that certification, the pre-existing non-conforming use, because when if they ever need to remortgage or they're selling it, it's a good thing to have in the file to say that those buildings are legal use. I don't remember saying that in this case. I didn't have any contact with the applicants, which sometimes would trigger my thought process, but ultimately, so I don't honestly remember. In the past, as a matter of fact, I've often wrestled with this in that in some applications that have gone before years past, where, for example, the one we just had, that was a situation where when the individual went to rebuild that house, he actually came in and he needed the expansion of the non-conforming structure. he got that variance, but he did not go through the certification process, which is unfortunate for just the previous applicant. But what I'm getting at is does the applicant have to go through the certification of pre-existing use just to simply ask for an expansion of a non-conforming use? The applicants, I believe, in their application this evening have actually indicated they personally have no intent of using it for a rental property, that it's for family use only.
Well, they'd have to either ask for a use variance or certification of pre-existing non-conforming use, one of the other, or both, or in the alternative. If I can't prove pre-existing non-conforming use, then you ask for use variance approval as alternative relief. It's not always that easy to prove pre-existing non-conforming, but there are methods as indicated in the prior application. And if the application is in the proper form to ask for that relief, then the next phase is in regard to variance relief to permit expansion of that non-conforming use, and testimony to establish proofs that would justify that relief, which perhaps that's going to be provided to the board, but we should be sensitive to that. It's not an automatic at all.
So, Mr. Hagerty, when we brought the original land use board application in, discussed this with Donegan, and we even identified that as one of the variances we would need, an expansion of a building with a non-conforming use, any additional variance as required. So we had that. We were aware of it. Obviously, with two structures on a single lot, it was right off the bat. We knew that was going to be an issue.
If the board, I think there's enough in the notice to allow the public to understand what you're doing and proceed with it, but you're not going to end up with a certification of pre-existing non-conforming use. It would be, it's not going to have that very language in a resolution if you're approved. Now, that may be problematic. It may not be problematic for the applicant, but if you want to rely on the expansion of a non-conforming situation there and go about it that way.
Can I speak to the expansion? Just so we're clear, we're not changing the footprint on either building. We are expanding the second floor. One is an attic that contains a bedroom. So we are going to the limits of the existing first floor on that structure.
And then it becomes a 3-bedroom at that point.
Well, that one does, right? That's the rear house.
There's no argument whatsoever about whether that's an expansion or not. It absolutely is. We've had situations with other boards where a screened-in porch is closed in, and the ruling is it's an expansion. And that is certainly a much lesser event than what you're proposing. You're taking a 1-bedroom to a 3-bedroom. That's an expansion.
Yes.
2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom.
Two currently going to 3?
It currently has 2, and we're going to, in that building, in that particular structure, we'll be adding a 3rd bedroom.
In the other structure?
Okay, are these on the sewer or on septic?
I believe they're
On sewer.
Yep.
Both of them?
Yes, sir.
They're on sewer. There's a sewer bill that we've paid on the property, yes.
Okay.
1 or 2
On the front house, we're actually decreasing the number of bedrooms. We're going from 3 to 2. We just have expanding that second floor to a larger master.
You're saying the smaller house is now a 3-bedroom and it will become a 2-bedroom?
I'm referring to the lakefront.
Okay. Let's talk. Okay, the lakefront is currently how many bedrooms?
3.
And it's becoming 2. Yeah, but you're squaring off the back corner or the roadside corner of that, aren't you?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
That's in addition to repairing a poorly constructed foundation. We have a foundation issue there with the existing retaining wall and building foundation. So we're repairing the foundation and then building above it.
And how much square footage would be added?
In that particular corner, it's only 40 feet, I believe.
Okay. And that's the only addition to that lakefront property?
Yes, correct, yes.
Okay.
Are there 2 sewer bills or 1 sewer bill? Is it 2 grinder pumps or 1?
I think there's one, but I have to refer to Mr. Sharino on that.
I only pay one sewer bill, so I would assume it's one sewer bill for both. I'm not definitely sure. We're not living in the house. We haven't lived there yet.
And what's the square footage addition on the house closer to the road?
Well, the house closer to the road, well, currently, I'm not counting the area in the attic. The existing first floor is 540 square feet. And our proposed renovation is going to complete that same geometry at the second, which is another 40 or 108 total. So just over 1,000 square feet. The footprint is not changing. We're really just modifying the shape of the roof, if you will.
Okay. You also proposed to do something with the dock.
On the dock, yeah, we're just going to slightly improve the shape of that and make the end of the dock a little bigger. Mr. Graham has a better take on that, if you will.
Is that shown anywhere?
Going on Mr. Graham's engineering plan.
It never reached me. It wasn't part of my review.
I never saw anything on the plans.
Nor do I.
No. You know.
No.
You saying you don't have the Dexter Walker engineering drawing?
No. I have Lakeland surveying and I have your architectural plans, Mr. By.
Yeah, there should be a plot plan that was prepared by Thomas F. Graham. And in the plot plan, he shows the addition and modification, and he shows the dock is just a single rectangular shape with an addition on the end, which kind of gives it a T shape, I guess you'd say, almost.
That would be correct. We supplied that information when Mr. Rushke asked for a bit more easement information with regard to the cross easements that would take place on the adjacent side of each of our property on either side. So that's how we had the second survey prepared. The engineering was prepared long before that.
Yeah, Nicole did send that out with her documentation.
I believe that was digital. I don't think hard copies were included in the packets that were dropped off.
Right, that's right.
Okay. So that would be.
No guts.
It should also be on the website if you can't get to that email.
I can share it, Chairman, if you allow me to.
Go ahead.
So this is our plan that was submitted.
Oh, there we go.
It's rectangular in shape, and then the lake is on the top of the plan. And you can see the existing dock is a thin rectangle, and we're adding this square area at the end of it, almost creating the T as described by Mr.
Okay.
How far does the dock go out?
Right.
How many feet?
The total will be 50 feet.
With the T at the top?
There's a detail of the dock on the right-hand side right here. And it's 7.5 feet wide, the existing part. And when it's done, it'll be 7.5 feet wide for 30 feet, and then the last 20 feet will be 18 feet wide.
It's kind of big there.
This does definitely precipitate a few more variances, which we should actually know the numbers, I would suspect.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that the numbering of the dock is included on the plan sheet below the zoning table. They were also identified in the letter that we sent with the plans. And I believe they were also identified in Mr. Rushkey's initial completeness review letter. But we certainly can tell you what they are when we're testifying. But I think have we gotten past the house use variance issue yet?
Oh, we've received testimony in regard to what's intended for both of the houses. We haven't had any testimony in regard to the reason for the requested relief.
Right.
Help me understand the hardship. What's for the relief?
I'm not a planner. I don't think that I can testify properly to that.
I mean, the relief was just the way that the roof line was. It didn't allow us to have the square footage we wanted on the second floors. So it was just squaring it and making it a little more modern, which was the request for the relief. We didn't think we were increasing the size of the property, only the second floors to make them more squared. They're all pitched and a little choppy upstairs.
And what is the purpose of that?
To have more space for us to have living space on the two top floors.
And headroom, because it's a pitched roof, so that to give more headroom.
The way the existing lakefront home, that it's really a steep gable roof with two dormers in there, and they were able to carve out enough headroom space to create a master suite, if you will. That included a bathroom, and then obviously a lakefront bedroom, but the bedroom on the lake side is in.
The bedroom's on the lake side, yes.
I may have misunderstood this. My understanding was you were changing the roof on the house closer to the road.
Both of the houses.
Both houses.
Both completely new looks.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. We were updating both houses to a new look. That's correct.
Similar
Okay.
look in concert with one
Yes.
another.
Okay.
Yes.
There's also a deck off the back of the house. Are you enlarging or just repairing the deck?
The deck was being slightly made larger. Steve
A
would
new
have the additional, I don't know the space difference.
Can somebody quantify that?
Steve or Tom, do you have those numbers, what the deck was and what it would be?
The new deck
Okay.
will be 26 feet wide, 16 feet deep.
The old deck?
The old deck is in two different shapes. The part closest to the dwelling is 26 feet wide by 8 feet deep. And then there's a projection of another deck that is 6.5 feet wide by 12 feet wide. And then the proposed deck is slightly larger than the combined area of those two decks.
I think we were just squaring it. It wasn't really to add so much additional feet. It was just to square it so that it looks square to the house. It's kind of choppy the way it is now.
It's a rectangle and then a trapezoid on top of the rectangle
That's right.
currently.
And it'll be a rectangle encompassing both pieces as in the proposed condition.
Right. And this is the whole thing, idea of that is just to satisfy you aesthetically?
Yes, it was to go with the aesthetics with the house, correct?
Okay. Right. Questions from the board? No questions?
Yeah, my question is, why do we have to expand it into the dock? What's the purpose of that?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Well, we're adding more dock space at the end. We have that, what Haggard said was a T shape. What's the purpose of that? Why are we adding the dock?
I think what we were trying to do is, I look at this drawing now, is we were trying to make, I believe, the dock closest to us wider and the other part not as wide. I think it got, I'm noticing it now when I'm looking at what, Tom and Steve.
Turned around.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
That when I'm looking at it now, it looks, respectfully, shame on us, backwards. It looks like it should be turned around. The idea was to have more deck space when you come off of, the property, to sit out and then to have the dock extend so the boat could fit there. So I think it's backwards. It is backwards, respectfully.
It's still gonna be way out into the lake, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
I think that there's a boathouse. There's a boathouse on both sides of us.
I understand that, but when you put a piece in and you move that in, whatever that is, 20 feet, and then go out with the rest of the dock length, you're gonna go out how many feet? And you're gonna overshadow the dock next door. And John, are those docks too close? Is there a close proximity with them existing as they do now?
Yeah, we asked them to give a dimension line on that.
Right, well, that's a massive amount of add there. When I at the dock is what I get frustrated with, because I think it's grabbing too much of the lake. It's not really fair. It's a very narrow lot. It'd be different if the lot was 150 feet wide. But this is
Well, respectfully, we want to do what's appropriate for the lake and the neighbors. We had no intention to try to make it, too big or not look. If you gentlemen feel that and ladies feel that it needs to be diminished in size, we're open to that. We were just trying to make it, it's like a little sliver right now. So we were trying to make it slightly larger to be able to accommodate more people coming on and off the dock.
I'm not sure that we have enough information about it yet.
Okay. The house that's closer to the road is going to become a 3-bedroom home, and it looks like you have a little spur of a driveway to provide parking. Where would the other vehicles park for that house?
If you look at the survey, we have additional parking if you're looking at the small house to the left of it, we have 3 parking spots right there to the left of it. The way that the lot comes, that's our property.
There's a lot going on with easements on those properties.
Where is the parking for the other 3 cars?
If you're looking at the house going down the small house to the left of it, if you look at the survey, it widens and there are 3 or 4 spaces, depending on the size of cars, that can be parked there.
Well,
on the grass?
Regulations are,
It's all gravel.
Mentioned for.
It's gravel. It's not grass. It's gravel.
Yeah, this is gravel.
There's a
In
parking
reality,
spot.
we have the best parking available in that neighborhood. Unfortunately, we have 2 up at the lakefront house. We have 2 at the rear house, and then we have that gravel parking area available to us at the bottom of the grade along the driveway. So the reality is that we are and I'm sure you visited the site, it's not the most perfect situation, but we do have probably the majority of the parking in that neighborhood. And it's divided nicely between the lakeside home and then the rear home.
You should provide a deed of easement to show that access for the lakefront house onto the other property.
I believe we provided the most recent survey has that information.
Like
Okay,
they updated their note, and there's a note on our plan regarding easement, access
Yeah.
easement for lots 1 through 7 in the area. And it's
Yeah.
book 1275, page 111.
Yeah, we should have a copy of the deed in favor of this property as to the adjoining property, whatever is lot 7, easement over lot 7. It seems like for the board to act on this, you need detail on your dock that you really propose, because it's reversed, as you said.
I think respectfully, I'm willing to forego the dock. I think at this point, it would make sense if we forego the dock and maybe come back to that at a later time. I think it's our fault that it's not in the proper form.
Okay.
Mr. Haggerty, this, as my granddaughter would say, this is a hot mess. Well, I think we need to understand the back and how that parking relates, and dock and the deck. It's a lot going on in this application that just, it seems a little messy.
But how can we provide you with the information you're looking for other than identifying 2 more parking areas within the gravel area? I mean, that's all that's missing from this, from the depiction of this situation. I mean, the decks are very simple. We're extending 1 deck by 2 feet, and we're reconstructing the ground floor deck that's in a peculiar shape. We're making them both regular. That's pretty straightforward. We're filling in a back corner that is void of structure and just has a foundation to complete that basic rectangle. So that's quite, that's, with all due respect, that's kind of simple. We have 2 parking areas delineated in front of the lake house, and we have to reconstruct the sidewall of the retaining wall. We provided the cross at Mr. Rushke's request, the cross easements the best we could on the survey. So it seems like the only question now that we've abandoned the dock is the depiction or delineation of 2 more spaces possibly in the gravel parking area off the driveway. Granted, it's an unusual lot because we have the driveway for all these homes cutting right through our lot. So yes, it's very unusual, but it's pre-existing. It's people have survived there for quite a while in the same condition, and we're not looking to aggravate it.
I don't know if I'm missing something here, but it's difficult for me to ascertain the lakeside building from the roadside building and what is existing and what you're adding. I don't think that's not real clear to me. I've been looking at this for a while. And like I said, I don't know if I'm missing a piece of documentation. I think I have everything else, and I did visit the property as well, but it's not as clear as we're generally used to seeing.
Yeah, I agree, Anthony.
Well, okay, let's open this to the public, see what the public has to say. If anybody from the public would like to comment or question this application, please go to the bottom of your screen and in the reactions, raise your hand. Anybody at all from the public like to comment or
If nobody
question?
else speaks, you have to.
We have Dave and Joy Levitt.
Yes. Her name in for 3rd or 4th.
You have to be sworn in first, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Yes. Okay, and where do you reside?
253 Lakeside Boulevard, lot number 9.
Lot 9, and where is that in relation to this property?
I think I answered incorrectly. We reside in Wayne, but we have ownership in 253.
Okay, and where is 253 in relationship to this property?
Are you on the right side there?
Looking down at the lake, we're on the right, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
you're adjacent to them on the right.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, my main comment has to do with the second house. It's quite unusual to have two houses on, one piece of property. So my concern is if it's expanded upwards, it's going to kind of overwhelm the area. So I'm, concerned about that.
Well, I'd like to address that if I could, but sir, are you talking about the house closest to the street?
Yes.
So I guess you live in the area, so when you come down that driveway, you're about 40 feet above the top of that house as you come down that driveway. And there's not another structure directly behind that house. It's the driveway and the road. So anything above the road clearly has a better shot over it. Any adjacent structures are not affected by the shape or size of this rear house at all.
No, but the lakeside houses, that's what I'm looking at, down at the bottom, not from the top.
The lakeside houses can't see this house.
Of course we can. It's right behind the house. It's next to the driveway that goes around.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, guys. If you look at the smaller house in the back, there are two houses, one to the left of us and one to the right of us. There's another property that has another house or a garage with a high house that is significantly higher than both of ours. We certainly wouldn't want to do anything to stop the view because we're at the back house. So I don't know. I really don't understand how raising it we're really just squaring it. It's not going to really change the look or I would think, do anything to the cul-de-sac there.
Yeah,
there are ones behind us that are higher.
The net change, if you look at the drawings that I provided on my architecturals, either A4 specifically addresses the rear house, right? The net change between the highest point of that roof and the roof we're proposing is under 2 feet. Right, that has a steep gable roof. We're proposing to put up basically a flat roof on there. So the net change in vertical elevation is right around 2 feet. That's on the rear house, the street side house. So yes, the volume is increasing, but the height is not increasing. And similarly, on the lakeside house, that has a very steep pitched roof as well that we would remove. And there we're under 2 feet between the existing ridge and the proposed highest point of our new roof. So in either case,
on the application, Mr. Bias, it seemed that what it said was that existing was 27.5 feet and then proposed was 27.5 feet. So there is a difference in the existing and the proposed? It also said 1.5 stories to 3 stories.
Yeah, the rear home, the street side house, I guess you'd call that 1.5 stories. It's a one because it's an attic. Your ordinance doesn't speak to that exactly, but it's not a full second story.
But the application doesn't indicate any increase in height. You say that there's an increase in height of 2 feet. So which is it? Is there going to be a difference in height between the existing and the proposed? I was at the site and the height of the home seemed similar between the homes on the right and the left and the one that you're talking about. Here it says that on the application that the height is not increasing. But in actuality, is the height increasing on your plans?
Yes.
All right. Then I think we need to really take a look at everything that we have here, all the documentation and the exhibits, and get everything in line. so that we have a pretty clear picture. That's what I would recommend, because it is a little bit confusing as we look at these things to try and ascertain what exactly is going up on the lot.
Okay, well, we're still open to the public. Mr. Levitt, do you have anything else to say?
That's my main concern. Just want to comment, if the wider place is the closest to the land off the lot, then I don't know how close getting to property.
Would you say that again, please?
Okay, his plan was to make the dock where you come off the land.
Right. Well, he's right.
He's
Okay.
right.
So he's
There, I
not
had
going
two.
to change the dock at all.
Okay,
Mr. Levitt,
comment if he resubmits. Just my thought.
Yeah.
Is that all?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Where it's made wide, where you come off the land, I don't know how far you have to be from property lines, because it's a narrow lot. And then
Mr. Levitt, if he's going to present that, he's going to have to provide amended plans. He's going to have to show the required setbacks and the proposed setbacks, the ordinance standards. So you would have all that information. The board cannot act on that tonight because the applicant has said the dock configuration that he wants or they want is reversed. So they've withdrawn that element of the application. So all we're looking at now is the proposal in regard to the deck and the houses.
that's fair enough.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. and Mrs. Chirino, you have your hands up.
No, I apologize if we
Turn in,
did. I was
please.
just,
We're gonna lower our hands.
I apologize.
Sorry.
Okay. Anybody else from the public want to comment or question this
Yes.
application?
Yeah, it's Tom Donnarumma. I live to the other side of the house, on the left-hand side, looking at the lake.
Okay, you
You
want
please
to
raise your
raise
right
your right
hand.
hand and be sworn in, please?
Yes,
You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your full name, sir?
Paul Donnarumma,
Spell your last name.
Donnarumma. And we have somewhat of a runoff problem with water from the top of the road. I don't understand, if you're gonna expand 2 more cars in the front of that house, that runoff problem could be worse than what it is now, and it's pretty bad as it is.
You live on the left side, you're on lot.
Yes, I do. 257 Lakeside Boulevard.
Okay.
Mr. Donnarumma, are you speaking about the drainage that goes between the two houses in that area specifically?
The water comes off the top of the hill and runs down, if you want to call it the road, in front of all of our houses. And when it rains hard, it's like a river coming down there, and it also comes down off of the existing property. I'm just stating, I'm not sure if it was asphalt or whatever. It could be a bigger problem than what we have now. And also the dock would be a major problem because I have the boathouse right next to it, and that would really be infringing on the waterfront.
Do you park any boats on the side of your boathouse now?
No, I don't.
As far as the water issue, the parking spots.
We're not adding, yeah.
We're always there. We're not changing any of that. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, then I misunderstood.
We're just using the existing spots that are there. I don't want to change anything. If there's a water runoff issue that's created, obviously, when we bought the house, we were told that the water runoff issue was corrected and that drains were built in order to stop the water from coming in. So we weren't looking to add any additional spaces. We're just going to use the spaces that are currently there.
Okay.
We were just testifying that we have ample parking for both structures. We're not adding any blacktop or non-permeable surfaces.
Okay.
I believe we mentioned when we were in the field that one day out there, I believe you were with us, that we were going to reconstruct that concrete culvert that's between the two properties as part of our repair of the retaining wall. I think that
Yeah,
That's a good.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there's no issue.
Is there
Paul,
any-
that was your only concern?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Would anybody else from the public like to comment or question this application? If so, please go to the bottom of your screen and in reactions, raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
You have one.
We do have one? What do we have?
Mhm.
Oh, there we are. Bill Rochelle.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You
My
want to
Mr.
raise
Rochelle,
your right hand or
please
be
raise
sworn
your
in,
hand.
please?
Yes, sir.
Just swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I certainly do.
And your full name, sir.
William Rochelle, that's spelled Rochelle.
And where do you
we have a
reside?
home. We have a home at 265 Lakeside, which is a few houses to the north of this property.
Okay.
From what I've heard so far this evening, it sounds to me as though this is an application that needs to be resubmitted and refined and clarified before the board passes on it. But that having been said, this is a lakefront area of the lake that, as I think, is the most densely developed on the lakeside in Hopatcong. And I suppose that probably none of the houses are conforming. And I think we have to be very careful about increasing the density, particularly in this part of the lake. Else the board is setting a precedent where other people could, say, buy a small home, tear it down, and then ask for a variance to build basically lot line to lot line. And although you all might not approve it, problem is, if you start setting precedents that allow greater density, courts in New Jersey might eventually overrule you. So I think at subsequent hearings, we need to be very careful when we consider the density that this proposal is recommending. And I thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public? Would anybody else from the public like to comment or question this application? If so, please go to the bottom of your screen and in reactions, raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board? Or are there additional questions or comments from the board members?
I wanted John to talk a little bit about the walls, because there's a lot of stuff happening with walls out there, and I know he's looked at it, but we haven't discussed anything with all the retaining.
Yeah, the wall that's being proposed, and their engineer can correct me if there's more, but it does appear to be a new wall being constructed adjacent to the existing asphalt driveway that serves the main residence. And my main concern was reconstructing a wall. They did indicate that they're going to move it to their side of the property line, but the concern is that either an easement or just some type of agreement with the property owner, because it is difficult to build a wall right on the property line without encroaching onto the neighbor's property. So they are proposing to basically repair that existing wall.
Okay.
And Tom, I didn't see spot elevations there. Did you have that on there?
So along on our plan, there's a grading and SES detail where we kind of blew it up. And we did show some proposed new top of wall elevations.
Oh, got you. Okay.
Existing top and bottom of wall elevations.
Gotcha. Okay. No, sorry about that.
Yeah, and John's correct. There's some kind of an easement or agreement is going to be necessary to allow the reconstruction of that wall before it's not there, if it decides to come down on its own.
Well, we would need to see that agreement
Understood.
or easement, whatever. I have to agree with the last person who testified, not in terms of density, because we treat everything individually. There's no such thing as precedent being set. But I do have to agree with him in terms of this application not being complete enough, that we need additional information.
I agree with that. I think there's a number of inconsistencies, so I certainly think that it would be better if we got a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, we're just trying to understand. We submitted everything. I totally appreciate that the dock is, not done properly, and that's why we removed it. As far as the house, I'd like all the neighbors to understand, all we're doing is squaring the top of the house. We're not making it any more dense. We're not adding anything that's going to change the line. We were just trying to square the top floors and square the rear deck. That was our only intention. We're not adding parking spots. We're not changing the footprint. None of that's being changed. And when we originally submitted the application, we got questions back and asked for additional surveys, which we did. So I'll certainly respect your opinion, but I thought we submitted a pretty complete application, and there were no further questions at the time we submitted it.
Well, that's why you come before the board, sir.
Right, so what is it that you would need from us further then, do you think?
Say that again, please.
What else is it that you would need from us at this point? What are you lacking from our application that we could provide for you?
Well, I think, well, first of all, the dock.
Well, the dock we've removed from.
The dock
With
we're
the
gonna
dock, we're
remove.
gonna remove from the application.
You're going to
because it's
remove
too-
that completely?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll remove the dock. We won't even discuss that now.
Mr. Chairman, I think we could take it back and ask to get rescheduled, and we'll sharpen up the numbers so that the actual drawings match the numerical values that were put in the application. And look to add any additional information that we can. But apparently that seems to be the major discrepancies, that the confusion on the building height. I don't know what we could provide. Everything else has been provided. But we could also provide some more deed and original survey information as well to clear up that initial effort.
All right. Would you want to do that June 7th? We have we're totally booked for the month of May. That's why we added this date of June 7th to our calendar. So that if anything got continued tonight, they could come in June.
June
Would you want to do that?
information would have to be into the town by the 30th.
Nicole, is that correct? The 30th?
Or that June 7th.
I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it would be 10 days.
Mr. Graham, 10 days ahead.
Or
10 days, okay.
Yeah.
So the last week of May, we would have to have everything in.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, June, right. Okay.
is this with notice or without, Chairman?
I think it would be without notice,
Mhm.
but we have to have a motion to
Mr. Chairman,
continue.
just one more question. In addition to clarifying the structure height, isn't there also something needed for the easement on the wall?
Yes. We need to see something about either an agreement or an easement, something about it.
Mr. Chiarino, since this is being postponed, you do have the opportunity, if you want, to submit a revision showing what you actually propose to do with the dock. If you don't do that and you decide to do it next year, you're going to come back in paying application fee, et cetera. So this is your opportunity if you want to do that in the context of this application.
And Mr. Haggerty, I beg to differ. The dock was not advertised. So if
Well,
we're going to
then-
continue this
then-
application with
okay,
no
yeah, yes, yes.
advertisement, he's got to advertise that.
Thank you, Mr. Tappan. Yeah, the dock would have to be advertised for variance approval if that had not been, and apparently it had not been advertised for variance approval. You would have to have a revision on your plan showing the ordinance requirements and the compliance or lack thereof with the proposed dock.
I think we're going to remove the dock. We were obviously
Okay,
Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to postpone it to June 7th.
Second.
Without,
Stipulation, easement.
okay. And Judy seconded. Nicole?
Mr. Bongiovanni,
Yes.
Mr. Dellarina,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffney,
Yes.
Mrs. Crock,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Tappan,
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert.
Yes. Okay, we will see you folks again on June 7th, okay?
Great,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Next, Andre Andrechuk, block 20101, lot 12, 108 Unger Avenue. Applicant would like to build a single-family home on a vacant lot. There are variances. Is Mr. Andrechuk here?
I am.
Okay,
I'm back, Mr. Chairman.
and are you being represented by anybody, sir?
Mr. Chairman,
I
I'm
have-
back also.
I have my engineer with me, and that's it. It's just myself.
Okay, you want to raise your right hand and have your engineer raise his right hand too? Bill?
You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
And first you, Mr. Andrechuk, your full name, please.
My first name is Andre. Last name is Andrechuk, spelled Andrutchuk.
Okay, and your engineer?
David Fantina, F as in Frank, Antina.
Mr. Fantini, you've testified before this board in the past?
I have quite a few times.
Yes, and you're currently licensed.
I am, that's correct.
Okay, Mr. Andrechuk, go ahead.
So we purchased this lot to build. I am currently building a few other homes in the Hopatcong area. Majority of the homes that I am building are in Hopatcong themselves, Hopatcong itself. And we acquired this lot and we decided that we should put a single family house on it. It's going to be a spec home. We are intending to sell it after we're going to build it. I think the home itself fits into the neighborhood with the style the way it is, because we have some bi-levels and some colonials on the street. This is the same style home that we built, or I built, I should say, on Santa Clara Trail. And it's kind of, the front elevation is in between a colonial, traditional, your 4-square colonial, and a bi-level. So I think it'll fit very well into the neighborhood. I don't know if the board wants for me to go in detail in regards to the architectural.
No. Are you in receipt of Mr. Rushke's letter of February 23rd, 2022?
I am.
Okay, did you have a chance to look over the 16 technical review items?
I did, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention in my brief explanation of the house, there is a variance for building height. When the original architectural drawings were given to the zoning officer, Bill Donahue, based on his calculation, he determined that the house was 6 inches too tall. So after we went back to the architect, in order not to delay the process of coming before the board and redoing the whole zoning application, we decided to go in front of the board by changing the building height by 8 inches. So we are actually, by 12 inches. So we're actually 6 inches below what we're supposed to be on building height. So we got rid of the building height variance by lowering the roof line. Okay. And the other item, we did look at the other items, and we can definitely explain them. Either myself or the engineer will be able to testify to them or explain them if they need to be explained.
Yeah, excuse me, Andre, maybe I'll jump here. I'll jump in here for just a second. We take no exception to them. I probably should just say, and again, this is David Fantina, the engineer. I probably should just enumerate for the board the variances we are requesting. And there are really three of them. Two are pre-existing. Lot size 15,000 square feet is required, and the area presently is 9,947 square feet. And lot width 120 feet is required, and 66.3 feet is all we have. And the only new variance that we're requesting, if you will, is the steep slope variance. This is an unavoidable variance because the entire property essentially, or a great portion of it, is steeply sloped. And there's really no way that anybody could construct a house on this property without that variance. Your engineer, John Rushke, also pointed out that in his item number 1, that we're also raising the grade within 5 feet of the property line. And perhaps it might be easier if I share my screen.
Okay.
I'll try to do that here. Okay, these are the plans, the grading plans that you have in front of you. This is sheet number 1. So Unger Avenue is to the right on this plan. The proposed house is outlined in dark here. And we have a retaining wall on the low side of the property here, which is the south side, a foot or so off the property line. We can move that in so that we're not raising the grade within 5 feet of the property line. However, it does squeeze the usability of the property. So we are requesting that waiver. If the board felt that was not appropriate, we would change the grading, but we are hoping that that waiver will be granted to make the property and the grading more usable.
When you say waiver, you mean a variance for the setback for a retaining wall?
The way Mr. Rushke's review indicates is, he says a design waiver for because we're raising the grade within 5 feet of the property line. I don't believe the actual location of the retaining wall is a variance per se, but I would defer to him on that matter.
Yeah, I think it is, but I don't think we have a problem with it.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, my main concern with the grading on the side is that you cannot push the water onto your neighbor. You know, it has to, right now all the water flows towards that lower area where the septic is, and you have two issues. One, you cannot push it onto your neighbor, and you cannot dump it on septic. So you need to be able to control that water around the septic system so you're not inundating the septic system. And that's really on the other side too. If you look at that, you have your contours flowing down and you're pushing the water to your neighbor. And we can't have that. You know, there was clearly a channel that on that property, and you have to maintain that because you cannot impact your neighbor. The one question I didn't raise in my report, and I just wanted, if you investigate it, it doesn't appear that water off the road is flowing onto this property. Did you verify that? That there is.
You actually did mention that, John. Yeah, and it's a very good point. I think it's number 10. I actually have your good idea. You said we should introduce a berm or a curb or something along the edge.
Okay, yeah, I did mention that.
And we will do that. Yes, we will do that because otherwise there'll be a problem for this property. Yes, we will do that. Essentially, I took no exception to any of the suggestions in Mr. Rushke's letter. There's only 2 or 3 I want to discuss with the board. One is because this lot, as many lots in Hopatcong, are somewhat constrained. The septic system has to sit in the back. The well is going to be in this area, and our dry well has to be, which is somewhat unusual, in the front. We did do soil testing in the back. We haven't done any additional testing in the front. It's such a small lot, I don't feel it's necessary. But if Mr. Rushke's office felt we could do additional testing there for the dry well. The
Well, you
only,
need to do test pits in order to, you're representing that stormwater is being mitigated through the dry wells, but if the dry wells aren't going to function because, you excavate that and it's all rock, that's the concern. I don't want to misrepresent to the neighbors regarding that, you're mitigating stormwater when you may not be. So you have to verify that your dry wells are in fact going to work.
absolutely. We'll do additional testing out there then. Okay. And then the only other thing is, Mr. Rushke is requesting super silt fence. I think since we made application to your board, the Soil Conservation District has actually approved this plan. So I don't know if we were to defer to them or if you would still want the super silt fence.
No, we want the super silt fence. It's penny wise, dollar foolish. Not getting silt fence to properly protect the neighbors on such a steep lot.
That's fine. And the only other thing I would just question is, you're item number 2, a landscaping plan should be submitted. We were just going to do the normal landscaping. Obviously any trees over 6 inches in caliper that will be taken down will be replaced with 2 trees 2 inches or equivalent. So we'll certainly provide that at the time of construction. And we take no exception to anything in the report, as I indicated.
Were the Nash letters issued to adjoining owners to ascertain whether they'd be interested in purchasing the lot or conveying property?
They were. I personally mailed them out and submitted the proof to Nicole.
Okay, Nicole, you have that? Nicole?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Yes, I do.
Okay, and we received no response from any of the owners?
Nothing written. I had some neighbors contact the office. Some people came in and wanted to see plans, but nothing formal.
So no offer to sell and no offer to buy. Okay. And the adjacent properties, are they improved with single-family homes?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from the board? Any other questions or comments? All right, let's open this up to the public. Would anybody from the public like to comment or question this application? If so, please go to the bottom of your screen and in reactions, raise your hand.
We have one, Mr. Chairman. We got Chad.
Mr. Latore,
Yes,
please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And where do you reside?
We reside on 107 Unger Avenue, across the street.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
So the variance with the setback, that is currently something that is not it's not matching up, it's not passing, right?
Well,
he needs variances. There's pre-existing non-conforming lot
Right.
area, lot width, but he can't do anything to change that.
Okay, so then if you can't do anything to change it, then why are you building on it? It's just a question, I was just wondering.
Well, there's a lot of undersized lots in Hopatcong and other municipalities too, and if the applicant can prove that he can provide water, septic, and build on the lot without causing a problem, runoff to any neighbors, then he would be entitled to variances unless he can acquire other property or sell the property to a neighbor, and no neighbor has stepped up and made an offer to purchase or sell. So if we would deny the variances, if the plan presented is reasonable and consistent with houses in the area, then the court could very well tell the borough of Hopatcong, well, then you've got to buy the lot, because I've seen that happen in the past.
And it does not fit that house type, and it being within such a small lot,
Number one, when we had purchased our house about 14 years ago, we were told that lot across the street was you could not build on it. It was
Okay.
a big nature open area. I understand things change, obviously, but just a few other things that we had is, just a look of the neighborhood. I think it does look a little out of place. It looks like it's forced in such a small area. And one of the biggest concerns that we have is obviously the water, because of the fact that we do have well water. Adding another well in that area is something. It's just something of concern with us. And just to impart that, back in 2014, we had to get ours hydrofrac because we started running low on water. So we see that as being obviously an additional thing, that we're noticing. I think also something else that was mentioned at the outset was in regards to being a curb to be proposed, so that there could be the adequate runoff of water. The problem that we have with that is in Hopatcong with DPW is that they do with the snow plows, they will destroy curbs, and it does take quite a long time for a curb to get replaced. So with that being said, there could be a significant amount of time before a curb does get replaced that water runoff would become an issue. Another issue that we did have is that with that water runoff, if you're going from, I want to say from north to south on Unger, that water is flowing downhill. So it's not that we're on an even grade on Hopatcong. It does go downhill. So those are some of the concerns that we had, and just from our perspective.
It looks like the water actually would run away from your house toward his property if you're across Unger from the property.
No, we have an even lot. So
Okay.
I'm talking about from the street itself. So the water that's flowing from down the street.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody else from the public like to comment or question this application? If so, please go to the bottom of your screen. In the reactions, raise your hand. Anybody at all?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand, but I can't. Okay.
Okay, is that?
Hi, I'm Orlando Vasquez. I'm the neighbor next door at 110 Unger Avenue.
Wait. You want to raise your hand, please?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
And your name, sir?
Okay, my name is Orlando Vasquez. I'm the homeowner next door at 110 Unger Avenue.
Okay.
And one of my concerns is something you guys were speaking about, which is the runoff for the water. I'm currently having issues with flooding due to there not being a curb. So that's one of my concerns. If this property is gonna I'm actually having problems also with the ground being deteriorated because of the water, and that's one of my biggest concern.
You could just say something.
When it comes to the building of this house, and my second concern is the well water as well. It's something that we all concerned about because we try to conserve as much as we can, but adding another property could be a problem as well.
Now, as you look at his lot, are you on the right or the left, sir?
If I'm standing in front of it, I'm on the right side.
You're on the right side. So you're the one with the pool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Vasquez, I would say that your concerns are certainly legitimate, and you may have heard Mr. Rushke, the town engineer, has just said that whatever we do, we can't let any runoff get onto your property or onto the neighbor on the other side. So the grading will be revised to make sure that nothing from our property gets on to your property. Obviously, anything coming from the road is not something we can do anything about.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Casavinci.
Yes, how you doing? My name's Larry Castrovinci. I'm at
Raise your right
104.
hand, please. Raise your right hand to be sworn in.
You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, sir.
My name's Larry Castrovinci. I'm at 104 Unger Avenue, 2 doors down from this proposed property. I do have some issues with the water runoff. The street it runs down here, coming down the hill. It's just like a river coming down here when it rains. There's a school bus stop at the corner. I'm afraid the children are going to get hurt. When the cars park out on the side of the curbs, the water runs out into the middle of the street. Coming from the curbs, they come out, hit the cars, go out to the middle of the street. I'm sure it could be resolved, but there are some curbs across the street from me that are coming into the road right now. The asphalt it's breaking up, and there's little rocks on my lawn, outside in the street. It's just a hazard. It's just a hazard waiting to happen. I don't know what the concern's going to be when they put whatever they're putting up in front of the curb, in front of this new proposed property. But I do have another issue with the well. My well is directly even according to the drawings that he's going to be putting up on that property. I don't know anything about wells. I just moved in here 4 years ago, and I'm not 100% sure how this is going to work. Is he going? What happens if he taps into the water flow? Is the water going to move to the back since he's on such a big slope? I had no idea. How can I find that out? You know, how does that work?
Mr. Rushke, do you have an answer to that?
Well, the installation of a well is regulated by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. You know, we don't regulate the withdrawal of water from the aquifers. So, you know, the applicant will require to get a permit from the DEP to drill and operate the well. I don't really understand the question regarding the downstream impacts related to the concern of the well. I'm not sure where the question was.
It's really not. It's two different issues.
Okay.
The downstream of the well, I'm not sure, is it going to change direction with his slope in the backyard, where the end of the block is going to get no water? I mean, can someone? How do you know about that? I have no experience in it, and I'm just looking out for an answer.
The recharge of the aquifer is not typically from a very isolated area right around the well. It's usually a more regional of impact of groundwater recharge that replenishes the aquifer. So, you know, the minor grading around this one particular property, you know, should not, you know, impact the aquifer way, you know, for that, you know. So the concern of impacting groundwater versus impacting surface water, you know, surface water is what we would typically address, and we're addressing that through proper grading and making sure that, you know, he's proposing to mitigate stormwater increases from the property by installing dry wells, and we've had that discussion that we want to make sure that dry wells actually work, because that's the representation that they're making. They're not going to have stormwater impacts from the property.
Okay. And is this a salt? Is it a sand gravel or rock well?
There's rock all over Hopatcong, but there is an overburden, and so that's what they have to demonstrate, that in fact groundwater, the dry wells are going to work properly.
Okay. And do I need to get my water tested from the Board of Health of the state of New Jersey?
Part of this construction, you don't have to.
Yeah.
If you have, you know, concerns, obviously, you always recommend to sample your well if you have concerns regarding the water quality of it.
Okay. All right, very good. I just, like I said, I appreciate your time. I have no experience in wells, and kind of don't want to at this point, but Just
Fair enough.
looking around.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Casavinci.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else from the public?
Yes,
want to
hello?
comment, question this application? Mike
Yeah.
Galicio.
Michael Galicio?
You want to raise your hand and be sworn in, please?
Yes, sir.
Where the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
And where do you reside?
Lot 11, 106 Unger. I'm on the right-hand side. If you're looking from the road to the lot, I would be left-hand side then.
Yeah.
Okay, my concern is with the variant size of the lot, it states that it's 66.4 feet wide. Am I correct?
I believe so.
And they're looking to put a 40-foot wide house on that property? Right?
Yep.
My concern is with being so close to each other's houses from the right and left side of my neighbor. So the house would be so close. And the reason why I'm saying that, we moved here with the understanding of, suburbs, you look and see houses far apart. So now I'm going to have a house close to me now.
On top of it.
Well, I'm technically on top of me.
Well, sir, we're not requesting a side yard variance here. We are maintaining the required side yard in this zone is 10 feet, and we're requesting, or we're showing at least a 12-foot. So we're not requesting a variance for that, despite the fact that the lot is not the required width.
All right, you're saying the lot's not the required width, so it's showing that it's technically 66.4 feet wide, correct?
66.3 is what I'm getting, yes, yeah.
Okay, so then why is it when you look at the surveyor, it says it's 75 feet wide?
That 75 is measured at an angle. That's the frontage. But the width, we're measuring it in a perpendicular direction, because obviously this lot is skewed somewhat to the road. So that if you look at there's 75 feet of frontage, but the shortest distance between 2 points from side to side is only 66 feet and change in this case.
Right.
So do you feel that putting such a large house on a small piece of property is fair to the other people that live around it?
Well, the test we always, to answer that question, we always ask, are we respecting the setbacks?
Correct.
And the answer is yes. If we were requesting a setback variance, then it gets dicey, but the ordinance requires 10-foot setback. So, and we have more than 10 foot. So yes, I would say it is fair. It's in accordance with what the zone is requiring.
Oh, so you're saying zoning requires 10 feet on each side?
Right.
Yeah, the way it does, the zone allows 10 feet on each side for lots less than 80 feet in width. They understand that a number of the lots in the R1 zone don't have the required 120-foot width. And there's a provision in the ordinance that for lots that are less than 80 feet wide, you have to have a 10-foot side setback.
Okay.
We are exceeding that.
All right. My next question is, again, with just like everybody else is concerned with the well. Everybody's well on this side of the house, on this side of the road that you're building this on, they're all in line. Now, my concern would be if they were to drill a well, of course, it would be in a water table, but then if it affects everybody else's well and everybody else's well has to go deeper, who pays for that?
I've never seen a situation where somebody drills a well and everyone else's well has to go deeper. I'm not aware of what kind of a situation.
No, I don't know aware of that either, but I'm just saying, God forbid it did happen.
I don't think there's any mechanism for that to happen.
How can you say that?
Well, the answer to your question is it would be up to each individual homeowner to drill deeper.
Oh, so you're saying if they put a house there and drill a well and it messes everybody else's well up, we have to pay for a new well to be put in?
Unfortunately, that's true.
Oh, that doesn't seem fair.
The assumption is you have to go deeper. I don't understand that. I mean,
Well, I've been living here 28 years, never had a problem with my well, but I'm just worried about somebody coming in so close to my property and drilling a well close to my well that it's going to mess my well up.
That's an assumption.
Okay, it's an assumption, but what about if it happens?
Well, I was a teacher for 35 years. I used to tell my students fair is a 4-letter F word we don't use.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
All right.
Beth.
Now with the slope situation, how is that going to affect their parking of vehicles in that area?
Well, I think I don't think they asked for any variance on the parking.
They're
So-
required to provide 2 on-site parking spaces under our ordinance, and they've done that.
Wow, okay. Well, my main complaint would be just putting a big house on a small piece of property. That's what my complaint is.
Okay.
Okay.
And the houses are just going to be so close together. I understand you say you have a setback of over 10 feet, but still, it's still close.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it, sir.
Okay,
Thank you for
thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Would anybody else from the public like to comment or question this application? If yes, Ms. Latore,
Hmm?
you want to raise your hand and be sworn in, please?
Yes,
You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes.
And your first name, please?
Tanya, Tanya, same last name, Latore, Latorre.
Okay.
I just have a question on I guess the plan that was submitted to the town, that there's a front setback that doesn't conform. So I'm just a little confused on how they can ask for a variance and automatically get it.
Well, they're not automatically getting anything. We consider things. We may give them the setback, we may not. I believe that the prevailing setback of the other homes in the area is about 25 feet.
I wouldn't know. I know ours is quite far off along the other neighbors, quite far off the road. And theirs, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, the standard is 40 feet, but if there's a prevailing setback, which would be the houses next to it that are lesser than that, they can observe that same setback as long as it's at least to 25 feet. So perhaps the applicant can provide a comment in regard to what is the prevailing setback? What's the setback for the houses next to it?
Yeah, the best I can do on that is basically, I'm looking at Google Maps right now. There's essentially 1, 2, 3, 4 houses on this side of Unger between Brendan Avenue and Conklin. And there is something of a variance in the, or variation in the front yards. But when I put them all together, 25 feet was about the prevailing setback. It's plus or minus. 40, as you said, is required, except whether it's a prevailing setback that's less than that. Ours is 25, just slightly more.
If I may comment, we actually did a prevailing setback for the street front. David, I don't know if you have it, but 104 Unger Avenue is 24 feet away from the house. 106 is 32 feet away from the street. 110 is 26 feet away from the street. And 102 Brendona Avenue is 50 feet away. So based on that, it says minimum house. Do you have this, David? Because I'm sorry, I don't understand the terminology. It says minimum house setback, and then it says minimum OH setback. I believe I emailed this over to you. Is there any way that I could show this to the board? I just don't know how to do it. Can I email this over to David and you put it on your screen?
You can, sure.
I'm emailing it over to you as we speak right now, and then you should get him. This was done by Morgan Engineering, and
So what was the prevailing setback for 110 and 16 was, because basically this house is going to sit between those.
so 110 is 26 and 106 is 32, but it says minimum OH setback. I don't know what that means. Overhang? I don't know what that means. I think it's an engineering question, maybe. I just emailed it over to David, and he'll be able to.
Give me a couple of minutes there.
Well, you're a little bit less than the prevailing setback.
Yeah.
We've got 32 and they're proposing 25.28. The testimony that
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. So OH stands for overhang setback. So how a roof has an overhang,
right?
That's what it is. So there's two setbacks: the actual house, and then the overhang for where your gutters are off the roof line. There's two setbacks, and it varies in some areas a foot to 2 feet. I just, if David, if you could put it up on your screen, that would be great, and everybody could see it.
With you in a minute. Give me 1 minute. I have to switch
Yeah,
computers.
we measure setback to the foundation. We don't go with the overhangs, so that's meaningless.
Okay, so then it would be to the house.
And that's to you there. You know. You let your emotion. That's to you.
Well, the point is you're a little bit less than the prevailing setback. And I know you've got constraints on the lot that may dictate placement of the house and not putting it back further, but you can provide testimony in that regard.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again here.
Go ahead.
They might.
Yeah, okay. Hold on a second. And this is called Average Setback Exhibit. It's prepared by David J. Von Spielberg of Morgan Engineering. I'll get a copy of this over to Secretary and to John Rushke. And as is said here, if I can read these properly, on 106, the setback is 32.9 feet to the foundation, 31.1 to the overhang. On 110, it's 26.0 to the foundation, 24.2 to the overhang. Lot 10, which is 104, it's a little closer, 24.3 and 22.1. Hold on a second. And the other two houses on the edge, the driveways on these two houses actually front on the side streets. I don't know if this one and this one count. This one's obviously something of an outlier. This is 50 feet off. These three are 24, 32, and 26, with the overhangs being slightly closer.
You know, in my opinion, the prevailing, you know, what the intent is with the prevailing setback is that when you're driving down the road, it looks normal. And so, you know, look, taking an average between the 32.9 and the 26, you're really the average between those two houses, because that's what you want to look normal as you're driving through. It should be 29.5. So I think it's hard pressed to start, you know, adding in the 24 to kind of bring the average down. I think you're really looking at those two houses, which are on an angle, because you're proposing to put the house on an angle. So for all three of those houses to look uniform, you know, the house needs to be set back. So I think you do need to, if you're going to put it at 25, I think it's more appropriate to ask for that variance.
And I will ask for that variance, and the justification for that variance would be simply that because of the lot is undersized, we are cramped. I'll go back again to the plan, my plan here. You'll see the setback, the septic bed, because of the septic bed is not in this location and configuration on a whim, but it's because a number of the neighbors have testified that their wells are close to our. That's true. That's true. There's wells in their septics. Obviously, we have to maintain minimum distances. We now have approval of the septic system from the health department, but the septic bed basically needs to be here. And We've made the septic system as small as we can by using an advanced treatment system and all of that. But we do need to maintain a minimum distance to our own dwelling as appropriate. So that's why we have the house where it is. And basically, that's why we're requesting the variance.
So I keep hearing the words cramped, small, narrow lot. If the house just doesn't fit, then maybe it just shouldn't be built in this area. There's plenty of room in other parts of Hopatcong where you wouldn't need variances. But in this tiny little area that you see on the screen, the house just doesn't really fit.
No, I wouldn't say it. There's a
If I
number
may
of,
say so, if I may say something, this lot, I understand the neighbors might not be happy to see a new neighbor next to them, but this lot is a dumping ground for the neighborhood. It really is. When we went in there to do our test pits or test holes for the septic system, we had to move for the first hour. We were moving over garbage and leaves and branches that's been dumped there for over years. So if anything, if you have a neighbor in your neighborhood on an empty lot that's a dumping ground, at least somebody's going to look after the property. Especially if somebody's buying a new house, I would think that they would want to keep it new for as long as possible. I don't know if this really means anything to the neighbors, but I would just consider that having somebody actually watch after a property versus having a dumping ground next to your house is a lot better.
I wouldn't consider it a dumping ground. I think it's a beautiful piece of nature that we all can see outside of our house into the trees. And we have no problem with new neighbors. They come, they go. We do have a problem with a cramped neighborhood that we didn't purchase when we bought our house. So it is upsetting. You see a lot of neighbors here today. We are not on board with it. We're not happy with it. And a lot of people didn't join, but there are more neighbors that are unhappy on the backside.
Well, you can't talk about anybody else's, for anybody else.
I agree. Yes.
You can only talk for yourself.
Okay.
It appeared on the exhibit that the lot sizes are fairly similar. Am I wrong, or?
66 feet wide.
There are other, that's pretty normal in the neighborhood. I mean, there's some bigger and there are some smaller very close by, if you look at the lot lines.
Right.
I'm not familiar with anything that narrow. I know ours is 150 by 100. I can't speak for the other neighbors, apparently, but I'm not familiar with anything that narrow.
Mm-hmm.
That has that large of a house, I'll say, on it.
Yeah, and just looking at a place, that's all, in the neighborhood. It's again, no issues with having new neighbors. Don't want to misconstrue that or have that misconstrued about us. But what I do want to say is that, if something does look out of place, we have to, and we see the plans, we have to say something.
Well, I certainly thank you for speaking up, sir. Thank you very much. Would anybody else from the public like to comment or question this application? If so, please go to the bottom of your screen and reactions, raise your hand. Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board? Do we need more information? Do we have enough information?
What's the square footage at home?
That is a big house, 36 by 40, 2 floors plus a quarter basement. That's a pretty big.
What's the square footage of the house that's designed here?
Square footage?
1440 times 2 plus the 3/4 basement. It's pretty big for the area. I mean, house-wise. When you look at the size of the other houses, this is a much bigger house.
And a much smaller lot.
And downstairs in the foundation plan, it says future bathroom. So do we have future bedrooms down there too? 4 bedrooms already. Yeah,
I wouldn't say that any plans are meant to put bedrooms or apartments in the basement, but the idea is putting a bathroom in the basement is you don't want kids playing in the basement and running up to the first floor to go to the bathroom to wash their hands.
That
It
happens-
means,
Or old people.
That happens in every day houses though. That's nothing new. But it says,
so,
so it's not
of
part
course,
of
because
what now, and you're not showing you're selling it as a spec house, so you're selling it saying, already I got all this alignment in place for you to expand the basement floor, correct? That's the sale point. It's a sale.
we could take the bathroom out if that's a concern for the board, but I think it's just a convenience to have.
The volume. I'm more concerned about the volume of the house in the area. I think it's very huge for that area.
Okay. What do we want to do? Anything at all?
The only thing I'm concerned about is the berming. Water runoff in the borough of Hopatcong is an everyday issue. So what are we doing to protect the runoff to the properties next door?
Well, that's a very good point. As far as, let me just say, as far as the runoff is concerned, this board knows Mr. Rushke as well as I do, and he's already opined that he wants me to change the contours and to make it very clear that there'll be no runoff onto the neighboring properties. I've worked with him before. We will certainly satisfy him that nothing runs off this property onto the neighboring properties. As far as the house being too large, the maximum building footprint coverage in this zone with this size property is 20%. We're only at 14.5%. The maximum lot coverage with this size of a property allowed by the zone is 35%. We're only at 22.4. I don't believe that this is too large a lot. Also, I'm looking at the exhibit that I showed before, and the lot next door to us, 110, that is also 75 feet wide. It's exactly the same size as ours. The lot two away from us, 104,